Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Cutting Edge Figure Skating Podcast. My name is Kim Dunaway, and in this episode, I'll be doing some bonus coverage because we had some big news that came out on Thursday about the return of Maya and Alex Shibutani, which I have to say was completely out of left field for me. When I got the press release at 7 a.m. in the morning, I saw Shibutani's announce, and my immediate thought went to retirement. They had never officially retired. There were certainly thoughts that they might try to come back in the previous Olympic cycle, and that never happened. Obviously, there were some health issues with Maya, especially. There were thoughts that maybe they didn't think they would be able to have the same level of success with the way that Hubble and Donahue and Chalk and Bates were skating. And so the thought was that was also part of the decision. And I think the fact that they've never officially retired is just kind of been lost on everybody, myself included. I mean, not everybody has an official retirement. I think Michelle Kwan has never officially retired from skating, right? Some people don't officially retire. So when I saw that press release, that's what I was expecting. And when I saw Comeback, my jaw hit the floor. I was completely shocked. My brain is still processing this news, what it means for US skaters in a field that is already incredibly very deep, what it could potentially mean internationally. We don't know. They're coming back after a 7-year hiatus. So let me just talk a little bit about their history and then sort of talk about what implications that this could have, especially for US figure skating. So Maya and Alex were part of what was a very successful team with Marina Zueva and Igor Shipelvan back in the late 2000s going into 2010. They debuted in the 2010-2011 season and won a bronze medal in their very first year, which was shocking. For me, it was shocking when Virtue and Moyer and Davis and White came out and got 6th and 7th, respectively, in their first world championships just a few years prior. So for the Shibutanis to go and do that in their very first year was really quite shocking. Now, they came back down to earth after that, and they would not get back on the podium until the 2016 season, 5 years later. And they wouldn't win their first US title until that same season as well. In that time span, of course, you had Davis and White, who were very successful and won the Olympic title in 2014. And then you had Chalk and Bates, who won the national title in 2015, the year after, and then went on to win the silver medal at Worlds that next season. The 2015-2016 season is where the Shibutanis finally sort of got back on track, beat Chalk and Bates at nationals, and then also beat them at Worlds. They were silver medalists behind Papadakis and Cizeron and ahead of Chalk and Bates at that World Championships. Go to the next year, you sort of start to see the rise of Hubble and Donahue. And at that World Championships in 2017, it was Hubble and Donahue who got the small bronze medal at Worlds after what was called then the short dance. However, they had a disaster in their free dance. Chalk and Bates, who were 5th behind the other two American teams going into that, also had a disaster in their free dance. And the Shibutanis won the bronze, kind of felt like by default, more so than anything else. And then going into the 2018 season, it was going to be very contentious between really all three teams, as they were all had a history of doing well, at least to some degree. Obviously, with Chalk and Bates having 2 world medals and the Shibutanis having 3 world medals, but 2 world medals in that particular Olympic cycle, they looked to be the teams that would be leading the U.S. contingent going into the Olympics. But then you had Hubble and Donahue, who were continuing to have a rise. They had the best programs of their career going into that season. And so at that nationals, you had Maya and Alex winning the rhythm dance. You had Chalk and Bates winning the free dance, and Hubble and Donahue were second in both segments, but won the whole thing. And so it created this huge question as to who was going to represent the US in the team event, because it was only the second time that there was going to be a team event. The precedent that had been set at the previous Olympics was that you would have one ice dance team, one pair team, and then they would split the singles. However, the Shibutanis were given the option to split the team event if they wanted to, and they felt like it would be best for them to skate in both segments of the competition. This caused some strife, I guess would be the word to say, with both Hubble and Donahue in chalk and baits, who were obviously not going to be selected to be part of the team event. Now, it was a very difficult position because you were going to have at least one team that was going to be unhappy. Everybody certainly had a argument to be on that team event roster. Obviously, Hubble and Donahue being the national champions did, and then you had two other teammates who had multiple world medals who also had an argument for it as well. So you're going to have at least one unhappy team. You ended up with two unhappy teams as a result. Go into the Olympic individual event, and once again, Hubble and Donahue are third going into the free dance after the short dance, and they made a mistake again, and the Shibutanis were able to get the bronze. They skated well. I don't think that they would have won the bronze had Hubble and Donahue skated up to their potential, of course. And then we don't see them again after that. Now, there is all kinds of different rumors that the Shibutanis were part of the rift that happened between Igor and Marina Zueva, and that perhaps there's some animosity between some of the other teams that were in Canton at the time, which included chalk and baits. That's a very, very long time ago. We're talking over 10 years ago at this point, but all of that is sort of out there, right? So now, fast forward 7 years to 2025, they're now making a comeback. Where do they slot in is the question. They were very good technical skaters, very strong usually in the patterns and what was at the time the short dance when they competed, right? Now it's been for now 2 Olympic cycles, the rhythm dance. And of course, in this Olympic cycle, there's no pattern at all. It's a pattern step, which is going to be brand new for them. There are elements now, like the character step, 1 foot turn sequence, aren't elements that they did in their time. You also got different scoring. It was +3, -3 at the time. Now it's +3, -5. It'll be interesting. We just haven't really seen this kind of layoff and see somebody come back. Now, obviously, Virtue and Moyer came back, but they took off just a couple of seasons between the 2014 season and the 2016-2017 season when they came back. So to have that kind of a break in between, it's very difficult to see that they would be at the level that they were when they left. And so for me, in terms of where they would slot in the US, if you go to the top, you've got Chalk and Bates, who are not just the top US team, they're the top team in the world. They've won the past 3 world titles. Obviously, the Shibutanis have been able to beat them in the past, and they've also had times when they haven't been able to beat them as well. I cannot see them really competing with Chalk and Bates. Anything can happen, but that's a very difficult thing for me to see. You go to Carrera and Ponomarenko. The way that Christine and Anthony have been skating in the past couple of seasons, in the way that they continue to improve, they are on the upswing. We have yet to see this team's peak or their ceiling yet. I think that Christine and Anthony are better skaters right now than Maya and Alex were when they retired. Well, didn't retire, when they stepped away. Now, maybe that's recency bias, and it may be. I just don't see them really competing with them either. So for me, them coming back, they're going to be competing against a lot of other teams who are trying to vie for that third spot, which is Green and Parsons, who were able to get that spot this season, Brody and Somerville, who had that spot last season, and Zingas and Kolesnik, who have been nipping at the heels of all of these teams, but just haven't been able to get over that hump. The Shibutanis have not said that they're in it for a couple of years. It certainly appears that their goal right now is to go to another Olympics. They are 34 and 30. Alex is 34, Maya is 30, which puts them right in the same age range as we're seeing the other top teams right now. But it's hard to see them continuing on to another Olympics. And I bring that up just because if you're US figure skating and you've got teams that you're hoping are going to be medaling potentially at an Olympics in France 5 years from now, you would certainly love for at least one of those teams to get some experience at this coming Olympics. Carrera and Ponmarenko, I feel like, are pretty much a lock the way that they've skated, provided that Christina does get her citizenship in time for that to happen. I feel like you would also like for one of those other teams to get in their slot as well. Let's look at Green and Parsons first, because Michael, of course, is much older than all of the others, older than Vadim and older than Ian. He's 29, right? So next year he'll be 30. Is he going to stick around for another 4 years or not? That's a difficult thing to say. And I don't think that's a question that he would be able to answer right now, because typically most skaters sort of go either season to season or they go kind of Olympic cycle to Olympic cycle. They're not typically looking ahead that much. But as an older skater with the injuries that he's had, it would not surprise me at all if he chose to take a step away and retire at the end of next season, which would mean that this would be his shot to get to the Olympics. And that very much could be in jeopardy, because who would be better, a team of Green and Parsons or a team of the Shibutanis? That to me feels like much more of a toss-up. If you look at a team like Emily and Ian or Emilia and Vadim, they're younger. You definitely expect for them to sort of continue on after this Olympic cycle. But again, if you're US figure skating, you'd probably like for one of those teams to get some Olympic experience if they were to beat out a Green and Parsons and make it to that third spot. Are you excited about a Shibutani's return or not? I'm not against it by any stretch of the imagination. I understand where people come from, in that you would like for a team to be competing the year before the Olympics, as in this past season, to really feel like they've earned their spot for an Olympics, as opposed to coming back in the season of the Olympics. But I just feel like, again, it's kind of unprecedented outside of the 94 Olympics, when we had that Boitano rule and you had Torval and Dean and teams like that come back that had retired and had been gone for some time. We really haven't seen that. And so it's hard for me to see how they really are expected to sort of come in and skate at the same level that they left at. It's just hard for me to see. Now, and if they don't, they may decide to shut it down and not go to nationals and not try it. Again, I don't have a problem with it. I mean, I think about like Sasha Cohen in the 2010 Olympics. She decided to make one more go of it. Like, I'm not mad about it. And I feel like if you are a Brody in Somerville, a Zinga Skolesnik, the Browns, who have, an outside chance, Green and Parsons, like, if you want that spot, like, you've got to go and earn it. I also have just mixed feelings about it, just because I feel like it's tough for an ice dance team to come back after that much time off. I would feel much more comfortable if it was a single or a pair. But it'll be interesting to see. And it does make it sort of exciting in a way to kind of have that unknown factor. Like, what are they going to bring to the table? They were a good team. They were entertaining, and I did enjoy watching them skate together. And it was nice to see a brother and sister team be successful. And perhaps they have been inspired by the Tashlers or the Morascheks, or I never want people to feel like they've left their career with regrets. And so they're still young, and I'm excited for them in that aspect, that they want to see if they can come back and do it one more time. But I feel like this decision would have been best made a year ago to really have allowed them to get their feet wet, because it's asking a lot in 1 year. And since I'm talking about the Shibutanis, I think I've also got to kind of talk about Guillaume Cizeron and Laurence Fournier-Baudry as well, because I've tiptoed around it a little bit in a couple of podcasts, but I've not really talked about my particular thoughts and what this looks like for the landscape of ice dance. And it's very different from the Shibutanis, right? They don't have a 7-year layoff. Guillaume obviously has the longest layoff, in that we haven't seen him since the completion of the 2022 season. Him and Gabby did do some skating and shows that we saw in like Art on Ice and some of the shows that they did together, and different from Vanessa James and Eric Radford, because I think a lot of people were drawing parallels to that particular situation. And it does hit a lot of the same notes, right? There you had Vanessa James, who was connected to Morgan Cypres, who had a big scandal sending unsolicited pictures to a minor. And obviously, she did not send those pictures, right? But there was always a question of, what did she know? Was she part of the cover up? You never really knew. But on one hand, I was happy for her that she was able to still skate and make it to another Olympics and get to another world team. It just unfortunately in that instance came at the expense of Megan Duhamel, who was not asked if she wanted to come back. Whereas at least in the situation with Guillaume, he did ask Abby Papadakis if she wanted to return, and she neglected to. With Laurence Fournier-Baudry, obviously she was not part of Nikolai Sorensen's rape. I don't think she even knew him at the time that that incident happened. Now, as far as I'm aware, she's still very much with Nick and was very reluctant to team up with Guillaume and had to be convinced by Nick to sort of continue on and do that. She's a fantastic skater. And so on one hand, I'm intrigued to see what this team looks like. It just feels icky with this, how it's surrounded not only with Nikolai's issues, but also with what we have heard Gabby Papadakis sort of deal with, not being supported by her partner, not being supported by her coaches at IM, with some different situations that sort of went on her. Felt like she was forced to have an abortion. It feels a little bit icky in that sense, but I do think that it's not quite the same as we dealt with James and Radford, but it is extremely unfortunate for a team like Desmogés and Le Mercier, who will likely get bumped because they weren't able to compete in this year leading up to the Olympics. She had to wait an entire year since Laurence Fournier-Baudry last competed for Canada for her to be released and be able to compete for France. So there was no way for them to compete internationally and be at Worlds and to try to help earn a third additional spot. So it's just unfortunate in that way that it sort of pushes that team out. There's also lots of theories floating around that it might also sort of push Lopareva and Bruzeau down as well. Obviously, we won't know until next season. And obviously, there's a lot of factors in that, what kind of programs everybody's picking, all of these things. But it is sort of intriguing. So now we have two different teams that we have not seen before in this Olympic cycle competing next season. Got Guillaume, who's multiple Olympic medals, and then you've got the Shibutanis, who also have multiple Olympic medals, one in the team event and one in the individual event. And so, of course, that's going to spice things up a little bit. My expectations are definitely higher for Cizeron and Fournier-Baudry, just because their layoff has been much, much shorter. And I think that their ceiling individually is much higher, but they don't have the years of experience skating together like the Shibutanis have, right? They've been skating for a very, very long time with very, very different partners. So it'll be interesting to see. Intriguing for sure. But if you'd asked me at the beginning of the season, like, what would be more surprising to you, Laurence Fournier-Baudry pairing up with Guillaume or the Shibutanis coming back, I would absolutely say the Shibutanis coming back. Like I said, I'm still trying to wrap my head around that whole thing. And I'm going to be spending some time this summer kind of getting reacquainted with some of their old programs and getting reacquainted to their style. And I would imagine that they'll be getting the host spot to Skate America, which again frustrates some people because that means it's a spot that won't be going to someone else. Don't know that they'll get another assignment that would require a country to give them a invitation to that once all of the other ones are filled. And obviously we'll know that probably in, 4 to 6 weeks when the Grand Prix assignments come out, exactly what that looks like. And they'll have to be in a lot of challengers and things like that to get world standing points and all the things. So we'll see. Those are my initial thoughts on that. Thank you guys, as always, for listening to the podcast. Love to know what your thoughts are, other than mind blown like mine is. What are your thoughts on these two teams, the new pairing and the Shibutanis coming back? Definitely let me know. You can send me a line at the Cutting Edge Pod at gmail.com. You can also send me a line on X or on Instagram or on Threads. You can also leave a comment on the video if you are watching on YouTube. I am recording my season's best list as we speak, so definitely look for those in the next few hours. All right, everybody, have a great rest of your week. Take care.